The samurai stood at the top of Japan's social order, feared in battle, respected in peace, protected by law. Their status wasn't earned in a single lifetime. It was inherited, recorded, guarded. But when historians began comparing burial sites, tax registries, and preserved remains from the same villages, something didn't add up. The warriors and the farmers were living side by side, dying side by side. And according to the evidence, they weren't biologically divided at all. Which means the greatest divide in medieval Japan may not have been written in blood. It may have been written in ink. For centuries, Japan's warrior elite claimed something extraordinary. Not just skill, not just discipline, but blood. A lineage descending from emperors, a class apart from ordinary people, a genetic inheritance tied to honor itself. But modern DNA testing tells a very different story. And what it reveals doesn't just challenge legend, it quietly dismantles it. Because when scientists examined the bones of medieval warriors, they didn't find a separate race. They found something far more unsettling. The samurai were never genetically distinct. So if their blood wasn't special, what exactly made them elite? That's where the real story begins. The image is familiar. An armored warrior beneath a crescent moon helmet, a family crest passed down untouched for generations, a pure warrior lineage. But here's the first fracture in that image. The term samurai originally described service, not ancestry. In early records of the Heian period, preserved in court chronicles, the word referred to those who served powerful households, not a race, not a biological category, a function. And that distinction matters more than most people realize, because if samurai began as a profession, when did they become a bloodline? That transformation didn't happen on a battlefield, it happened on paper. By the late Heian period, regional strongmen were gaining power, but power alone is unstable. Without recognition, a warlord is just an armed rebel. And in medieval Japan, legitimacy came from ancestry. Major warrior clans like the Minamoto and Taira traced descent from imperial princes, claims recorded in genealogical documents known as keizu. Modern historians examining surviving copies note something critical. Many originals were lost in fires and wars. Copies were reconstructed generations later. That doesn't automatically mean fabrication, but it does mean lineage was curated. And when lineage becomes curated, it becomes political. If ancestry can be edited, how much of elite blood is narrative? As military rule solidified under the Kamakura shogunate, status hardened into inheritance. Now blood determined rank. But biology remained flexible. Adoption was widespread among samurai families. A powerful house without a strong heir would legally adopt a promising warrior. Once adopted, he became blood. No distinction. Over generations, this practice blurred genetic continuity. Anthropologists studying medieval burial sites, including analyses published in Japanese bioarchaeological research over the last 2 decades, show no isolated skeletal cluster unique to samurai. Yes, some warrior graves show higher protein diets. Yes, they show combat trauma. But genetically, they align with the broader regional population, which leads to a deeper question. If the biology was shared, why did the myth of difference grow stronger? Excavations from Kamakura period cemeteries reveal something subtle. Warrior remains often display horseback stress markers and weapon injuries, but mitochondrial and Y chromosome distributions do not form a separate lineage cluster. In simple terms, they were not biologically segregated. They were socially elevated. And this pattern aligns with population genetics studies of modern Japanese ancestry, which show broad continuity from medieval to contemporary populations. There is no genetic boundary marking former samurai zones. That absence is not weakness, it is evidence. But the most revealing period was still to come, because when the war stopped, the real battle began. In the 17th century, peace arrived under Tokugawa rule. For 2 centuries, large-scale warfare vanished. Now the sword had little purpose. And without constant war, what justified a warrior's privilege? Ancestry. During the Edo period, historians have documented a surge in genealogical production. Family trees expanded. Connections to prestigious ancestors were clarified, in some cases enhanced. As Japan entered long peace, the sword became ceremonial. The scroll became everything. Professional genealogists were hired. Lineages were polished. Families fought not with steel, but with documentation. This wasn't crude forgery, it was competitive ancestry. The more society froze status, the more biology continued mixing beneath it. Lower-ranking samurai married into merchant families. Adoptions continued. Branches merged. On paper, purity increased. In reality, integration deepened. Now we arrive at the modern lens. Geneticists studying Japanese population structure consistently find strong regional continuity, not elite isolation. There is no identifiable samurai haplogroup, no dominant Yai line exclusive to warrior descendants. The data shows something entirely different. The samurai did not maintain a closed biological class. They were drawn from the same genetic pool as farmers, artisans, and merchants. Yes, diet differed. Yes, social status differed. But DNA did not. And this reframes the entire narrative. The samurai were not a race. They were an institution. And institutions can shape identity far more powerfully than genes ever could have. When the Meiji Restoration dismantled the samurai class in the 19th century, titles disappeared, swords were surrendered, stipends ended. But their DNA didn't vanish. It had already merged back into the broader population. Modern genetics reveals a quiet truth. The samurai didn't disappear, they dissolved. Their blood was never separate. It was elevated, organized, mythologized, and eventually redistributed. The elite were never biologically above the people. They were the people structured into hierarchy. And that may be the most powerful revelation of all, because it shows that what defines an elite is not superior blood. It is control over narrative. The samurai mastered that art. For centuries, they shaped how history remembered them. But DNA tells a quieter story. And sometimes, the quietest truths are the most disruptive. People believe the samurai were different at the biological level, a higher breed, a preserved warrior bloodline, separated from ordinary society by something written into their veins. But the science tells us something far more profound. They were not genetically elevated. They were elevated by structure, by narrative, by power. Which means the real force that shaped history wasn't blood, it was belief. And that raises a bigger question. How many other pure lineages around the world are built on the same illusion? How many elites, dynasties, and ruling classes were simply ordinary people who mastered the art of storytelling? Because DNA doesn't just expose secrets, it rewrites identities. If this story changed the way you see the samurai, then you're going to want to see what genetics is revealing about other legendary civilizations. Subscribe to GenealogyX because the past isn't disappearing, it's being decoded, and we're just getting started.